Good afternoon, namaskar, and a very warm welcome to everybody who is joining this online program this afternoon, being organized by the delegation of the European Union to India as part of the India at 75 celebrations, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. We are going to have a discussion online today on the topic EU-India Indo-Pacific Connectivity Partnership. We have a series of high-level speakers from the EU and India today, including the Ambassador of the European Union to India, His Excellency Mr. Ugo Astuto, and Mrs. Reenat Sandhu, Secretary West, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Our speakers will discuss today the EU-India Connectivity Partnership, as well as recent initiatives from the EU, for example, the Global Gateway, and activities of the European Investment Bank in India and in the region. The event is being organized on the Facebook page of the EU delegation also. And I'm requesting all the people who have joined on Zoom, you may please ask your questions in the Q&A box. Those who are watching on Facebook are invited to ask your questions on the comments box. And we hope to have an interactive session today. So first of all, may I invite the Ambassador, Mr. Ugo Astuto, to kindly give his opening remarks. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anil, dear colleagues and friends. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all. Let me recognize specifically Professor Chaturvedi and Dr. Benaglia. Thank you very much for joining us and being part of the event today. A special thank also to my colleague Christophe Manet, who has made this event possible. As you know, this is a special event in the framework of the celebration of India's 75 years of independence. So let me also thank the Ministry of External Affairs for inviting the EU delegation to take part in this celebration. And let me take the opportunity to congratulate the people and the government of India on these special occasions. As it was to largest democracies, the European Union and India definitely share the same core principles and values. Democracy, respect for rule of law, and a commitment to multilateralism. And we are living in a world which has become ever more competitive, by the way. I don't need to refer to current events to be more explicit. It's a world which is more interconnected, but also less stable and erratic. So I think we all see more clearly than ever the need for like-minded democracies such as the EU and India to work together bilaterally and in the pursuit of global common goods. And this year, we also celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations between the European Union and India, and we celebrate our long-standing ties. It's a strategic partnership since 2004, which has gained particular momentum in the past few years. A trend which I'm glad to say has been further cemented at the last leaders meeting, which took place in May 2021. At that meeting, our 27 leaders and Prime Minister endorsed the EU-India Connectivity Partnership. So I think that was another particularly evident proof of the importance that we both attach to our strategic partnership. Now, the EU-India Connectivity Partnership, the speakers that will take the floor later will expand on it. But let me simply recall that it addresses a full spectrum of connectivity in the various dimensions, which can be digital, energy, transport, and people to people. And let me particularly refer to the principles that underpin this partnership. These principles are very important, and they are grounded on democracy and on the rule of law. It's about a connectivity which is inclusive, which is transparent, which is sustainable, and sustainable in a fiscal perspective, in an environmental perspective, and in an economic perspective. So together with India, we want to foster resilient connectivity between our regions. And to put it in a nutshell, let me quote from the President of the European Commission when she said that we want to create links, not dependencies. So having agreed on these basic connectivity principles, we are now taking forward our shared approach, and we are trying to identify projects to advance our common agenda. Let me be very clear, we are not starting from scratch. Both INTPA, our development agency, and the European Investment Bank have been active in India for years, decades even, and we shall hear from them later on in the discussion, the work actually implemented and perspectives ahead. Last September, finally, the President of the Commission launched a major policy initiative, the Global Gateway Initiative. It's important for us to underscore that the bilateral connectivity partnership between the European Union and India has given us a head start with India. But at the same time, it's now fully part and parcel of the global gateway, which is meant to give a global impulse to the same principles that underpin our bilateral partnership. Moving forward, we want to look at ways to scale up and further develop synergies between our efforts and with the work of multilateral development banks, such as the European Investment Bank, but also public and private financial institutions of the EU member states. And together with India, we want to identify and promote sustainable infrastructure projects. And both Professor Chaturvedi and Dr. Benalia are also engaged together from the think tank side to look at the way ahead, at perspectives that are opening up for us. So let me come to a conclusion here simply by saying that connectivity, it's an important dimension of our bilateral cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. And I'm pretty sure that the discussion today will provide insightful reflections on how to further enhance this partnership. Unfortunately, my friend and colleague, the secretary, Mrs. Rinat Sandhu, could not participate live, but she has sent a recorded message with a welcome remarks. We will listen to it now in a moment. And so let me stop here and wish you all a very successful seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And as you rightly said, we have the message from Mrs. Rinat Sandhu, Secretary West in the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. And we'd like to listen to the message now.
Mr. Ugo Astuto, Ambassador of the European Union, Delegation to India, diplomatic colleagues, think tank experts, representatives of business, and friends from the media. It is my pleasure to address this special event hosted by the EU delegation as part of the India at 75 celebrations. As you all know, India is marking the 75th anniversary of its independence through a series of commemorative events under the banner of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The celebrations began in March 2021 and will end on 15th August 2023. Ministry of External Affairs is leading the celebrations in the week of 21 to 27 February 2022. We are delighted by the active participation of a large number of diplomatic missions in these celebrations. I wish to extend our sincere appreciation to the EU delegation in New Delhi for joining us in this commemorative festival. AKAM, or the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, is an embodiment of 75 years of India's progress. It celebrates the glorious history, culture, and achievements of people of India, as well as the friendships and partnerships that supported them. The EU has been India's natural and preferred partner. Our relations are rooted in shared history and common values of democracy, rule of law, and firm commitment to multilateralism. This year, when we are commemorating 60 years of establishment of relations with the EU, our ties assume special significance. We live in a highly interconnected world. The COVID-19 pandemic has spotlighted the importance of connectivity and supply chain resilience for economic growth and survival of sovereign countries. At a time when the highways and cyberways that will determine the future of global trade and commerce are rapidly being redrawn through opaque and often coercive models, it is important for like-minded partners like India and the EU to work together to foster resilient connectivity between our regions that can create strong linkages and equal partnerships rather than dependencies and debt traps. It is in this spirit that India and the EU launched an ambitious and comprehensive connectivity partnership at the India EU Leaders Meeting in May last year for enhancing our cooperation on physical as well as digital, energy, and people to people connectivity. Through this partnership, India and the EU have reiterated their commitment to promoting a rules based, sustainable, inclusive, equitable, and transparent approach to connectivity to meet the huge infrastructure needs in India and beyond and contribute to a world that is greener, safer, cleaner, more digital, resilient, and multipolar. It is of no surprise that the same objectives and approach are reflected in the EU's new connectivity strategy, the Global Gateway. Both are mutually complementary and open numerous opportunities for joint collaboration. The connectivity partnership has indeed added a new and critical dimension to our strategic partnership and will be the core pillar of our bilateral cooperation as well as our engagement in the Indo-Pacific region. We are therefore keen to closely work with the EU and all relevant stakeholders to implement this partnership. We are planning a series of seminars in partnership with RIS and think tanks from the EU to brainstorm and chalk out a robust roadmap with a pipeline of concrete projects across different sectors that can be announced at the next India-EU summit. I once again thank the EU delegation for organizing this timely event on connectivity and hope it will set the tone for subsequent consultations and come up with innovative ideas and suggestions for further strengthening India-EU partnership. I wish all participants fruitful deliberations and reiterate my warm greetings on the occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Thank you.
Many thanks to Mrs. Sandhu and to the Ministry of External Affairs for those remarks, which help us to set out the stage for today's deliberations. And I would like to now invite Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, the Director General of the RIS, well-known think tank, Research and Information Systems for the Developing Countries, to take forward the session today. And we will hear some opening remarks from Dr. Chaturvedi, and then he will be inviting the speakers and organizing the Q&A after that. Over to you, Sachin sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Patni. Thanks a lot for giving this opportunity. Your Excellency, Ambassador of the European Union to India, Mr. Uga Astuto, our Secretary West, Ms. Rinat Sandhu in absentia, my colleagues on the panel, and also those who are hooked up with this event. A very warm welcome to this discussion, one of the important ones as we celebrate 75 years of India's independence and set in the stage for another 25 when we would be 100. And this is what our Prime Minister's emphasis is, how we plan our partnerships for next 25 years. How do we contribute to India, which would be contributing in terms of a better world for everyone. And that, I think, is also in tandem with our collective commitment for sustainable development goals. So that idea is very much on the table. As Secretary West, Ms. Srinath Sandhu has emphasized, with celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, India at 75, there are a lot of things to be done, and we are in extremely crucial times as we are going forward. As Ambassador mentioned, this is also a year we are celebrating 60 years of India-EU partnership, a partnership which is of great strategic importance. It is important in terms of our partnership, and we are so privileged that we are now partnering with Stefania and her team to take this forward, as was mentioned, through series of seminars as we meet at the summit level again, and by then demonstrate some areas of our accomplishment, set the roadmap for others, and take this forward in terms of how we are going to go forward. Recently, India has presented India's own annual budget, and this time the huge emphasis that the finance minister had was in terms of India building up India's own infrastructure and India's connect with neighboring countries. 7 areas have been identified by our Ministry of Finance and by Prime Minister in terms of how we take this forward. In fact, there is a spectrum of 7 items which have been identified as PM Gati Shakti. So Gati Shakti is something to achieve very quickly. And this is basically emphasizing on multimodal connectivity. And you would be glad to know that in next few years, India would work on these 7 areas. And I would just quickly tell you these areas in terms of how they have been chosen and what kind of budgetary allocation for this year that has been made. The highest emphasis is in terms of developing the road transport and highway linkages within India and with neighboring countries. And we are proposing to spend something like $26.52 billion on the whole exercise, on the whole project that would come up in the country. There is also the Highway National Network Plan with $2.66 billion. Idea is also to build new airports in India at the cost of $1.4 billion. Port, shipping, and waterways has been Prime Minister Modi's emphasis for last 7 years. India has built 42 ports, and these 42 ports in last few years have taken a lot of government expenditure. This year, again, around $1 billion have been kept for new ports in India. Railways, $18.7 billion, power distribution. And this is our idea of South Asia one grid. So one power connect with Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, one grid in South Asia to come up, for which $2.24 billion have been kept aside. Similarly, for facilitating digital payment, almost $200 million have been placed aside for this. So friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's a huge emphasis in terms of how India is going to go forward with a partnership. But this is also a partnership where India is equally concerned about norms. India is equally concerned about the principles with which we are building the infrastructure. And I think at global level, given the current crisis, which has deepened in last 24 hours, our concern is very much in terms of how we take everyone along and how we do that with the norms and rule-based order for which democracies are dedicated to. And from that point of view, as I said, sustainability and His Excellency Ambassador Uga Astutu also emphasized in terms of we taking it sustainably, both in terms of environment, but also in terms of finance. And that, I think, is something that I would be very much requesting my colleagues on the panel to enlighten us. How do we achieve this twin balance of finance and sustainability together? The international goals, of course, are there, but our commitment is also in terms of evolving national frameworks on climate change and our collective commitment for Paris goals to take us forward. The idea of digital transport and energy connectivity is something to which India and EU have already dedicated themselves, and that, I think, is part of the roadmap for 2025 to which all of us are dedicated and devoted to. India and EU's partnership in terms of the joint statement that came out in 2017 also establishes the broad contours of our policy and our linkage that is there. I would also very much like to ask our panelists today in terms of their ideas on Indo-Pacific, which Ambassador Uga has to also mention. So I think we need to take this forward in terms of these three questions, the future series of seminars, which both Rinat Sandhu and Ambassador Uga has to mentioned. What kind of seminar focus? And there again, Stefania, who is my colleague and counterpart in EU, to take this discussion forward would be contributing. So with these words, I once again very warmly welcome each one of you. We have a very accomplished panel today. We have Mr. Jean-Louis Ville, the Director General, the Director from the Director General of International Partnership of the European Commission, Brussels. We are also joined in by Ms. Romana. She has been one of our great supporters and somebody who has been encouraging think tanks to do much better in terms of contributing to partnerships. So thanks, Madame, for joining in today. We are quite privileged to have you. As all of us know, she is Ambassador at Large for Connectivity. And we are also joined in today by Ms. Maria Shaw-Bargan, the Director of Lending in Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, Asia, and Latin America at EIB Global Enterprise. So thanks a lot. Warm welcome to all of you today for our discussions. And I see that the questions and points are pouring in. I would encourage all our participants today to share your perspectives and ideas as I invite our first panelist today, Mr. Jean-Louis Ville, to share his perspectives. You have the floor, sir.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Chateau-Redy, for your very nice and kind words. It's a real pleasure to be with you today to celebrate this anniversary and contribute to the large discussions around Global Gateway. I will have the privilege to introduce you to the Global Gateway strategy. And well, mostly it is always a challenge, I would say, somehow difficult to explain what the EU does, given our broad and deep engagement in all sorts of issues in Europe and across the world. So we do publish grand strategies, and then people ask about what does it really mean? What are you actually doing? What does it mean for the future? So I'll try to take the challenge and make it hopefully clear within the next 10 minutes. It's short, but I'll give it a try. And what I'd like to try to do is to see how we connect the objective to the strategy through actions. And specifically in the case we're discussing today with India, I would be very keen to hear also your thoughts later and during the question and answer sessions. So the EU and the European Commission are focused on several main priorities that represent the global challenges. Because we focus on them inside the EU and also externally with our partner countries, including India, and this is what Global Gateways is all about. These objectives include climate change and the European Green Deal, sustainable growth and jobs, multilateral rules-based global order, which I think is of real importance is at the moment we now speak, and digitalization. Our strategies and policies, including the Indo-Pacific strategy and the global gateways, are the framework within which these priorities can be acted upon. Now, a few words on background and evolution. The global gateway strategy that was published last December follows our former Connectivity Europe-Asia strategy of 2018. So we are not starting from nothing. We're just building up on what was already existing very much for Asia. Since that time, in 2018, things have happened. Pandemic has forced us to think about global connectivity more and more, and underline the importance of resilience and sustainability. There are 5 areas in particular that we highlight. Digital divide, of course, the global digital transformation as one, the transition to clean energy, a second, third is transport, and fourth, people to people, because it's not only about hard, it's also a soft and human-centric strategy, and that encompasses education, research, innovation, and finally, we look into the global supply chains. All these areas tend to involve 2 things: physical infrastructure on one hand, and rules, regulation, principles on the other. Developing hard infrastructure is fundamental, of course, for development, for job creation, innovation, and raising the standard of living. We all know also about the huge global infrastructure gap needed to meet the minimum global objectives around the sustainable development goals you referred to. And here we're talking about schools, hospitals, roads, university, cables, metro, railways, etc. But not only that, we need to make sure that they are sustainable and climate resilient in a way that helps us to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. So we have these broad global objectives that are framing our actions. And of course, this is quite a complicated landscape. Think about just some of the things that are involved. Public, private sector financings, loans, incentives, grants, good governance, environmental assessments, feasibility checks, climate proofing, public consultation, all things that are absolutely relevant and necessary and need to come together so that we can, at the end of the day, make the right choice and guide the right investment, so to achieve the objectives on one hand and stick to our, let's say, the goals that we have in terms of development and of climate change. And of course, this landscape is not static. It's changed quickly. Over the recent years, these issues has come more and more at the forefront of our discussions, more than before, I would say, because several major actors focus on these issues with various initiatives. I'll just name 2 here, which are quite famous. One is BRI from the Chinese side, and the other one is the Build Back Better from the US side. All these frames are around the same. So this needs for all of us to go into a stronger and deeper partnership. Now, what about India? Partnerships are, of course, important because they recognize that we cannot solve all these challenges alone in our corner, and that they reflect that what we can all add value to in different ways. They are also a way to demonstrate that we are mutually agreed objectives and principles, and we agree and we stand for them. And why this is why last year the EU signed a connectivity partnership with India that Ambassador Flahotin will certainly speak about. Now, this is where the EU Global Gateway comes into the play, because it's where the EU wants to add value, not just in terms of funds, but also to build the very partnerships needed to meet these objectives in a way that is based on principles and values. In fact, I was just yesterday in Paris, where I attended the Indo-Pacific Forum, and it was a great pleasure, I must say, to see how important the role India played there, including through the representation of the Foreign Minister Jaishankar, whom we met with the Commissioner. I was also involved in the high event that was organized on Monday, jointly by India, Exim Bank, and the Agence Française de Développement, where there were many sessions that demonstrated through the, let's say, a more professional bankers-oriented discussions, the importance of sustainable financing. Financing, of course, is fundamental. Recognizing the magnitude of the problem in front of us, the Global Gateway Strategy aims to mobilize 300 billion until 2027. It means that up to 135 billion worth of investments will be made possible through the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus, which is the new scheme for guaranteeing funds. And this includes also a new initiative by the European Bank. Maria will certainly speak about that in a few minutes. It means also that up to 18 billion are planned of grants for financing and 145 billion are planned for investment by the European Financial Development Finance, EIB, but also the French, the German, and the various national development finance institutions. So what does Global Gateway mean for our partnership with India? Primarily, it means that we're working with India to support sustainable modernization, which is a fundamental objective of the EU-India 2025 roadmap. And we are building on concrete foundation. I could gladly spend an hour talking about our work just over the last 2-3 years, but I will not, promise. Just a few examples, perhaps, to illustrate the depth of our recent work, where our grant funding has already leveraged over €500 million investments. In 2021, we've started a new partnership with IFC with a funding of 18 million, focusing on accelerating climate smart infrastructure service in Southeast Asia, which is called, with a very strange acronym, AXIS, in which India features strongly and which aims to deliver in an infrastructure pipeline worth nearly 1 billion. So this is one of the elements that help us to identify the right projects to do. In 2021, we also started a new action with the IB, demand side management, social infrastructure and renewable energy expansion, with a nice name of Désiré, of which India is a co-participant and to which EU is contributing over 100 million. In terms of private sector engagement, it is also increasing. We have invested in agricultural blending through Uruma Fund, led by Cofidis and managed by Gawa Capital, with 120 million contributed by the EU and private investors. This provides access to loans to farmers in underserved rural area and is currently present in 7 states in central India. In 10 years, it has supported over 100,000 households in marginalized communities. In 2022, we also have 9 ongoing projects from our Switch Asia worth 13 million, which is focusing on supporting producers and SMEs to promote sustainable consumption and production. We're also supporting India's sustainable modernization with that is a big objective. I think examples I'm giving now will illustrate a bit what we're trying to do upstreams and downstream, from financing and de-risking to technical assistance. But our Global Gateway Partnership is more than that. It's also working with India on the international stage on mutual objectives, means supporting the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure and the International Solar Alliance, not just with words, but with actions and financing. India leadership through these fora gives us, as the EU, an opportunity to bring our tools and knowledge to the table and to help the members of these initiatives, whether through climate proofing infrastructure, disaster risk management and mitigation, early warning systems using satellite data or portfolio insurance to attack and to tackle this issue. For the future, what does EU-India agenda look like in the immediate future? In short, it's ambitious, which reflects the strength of our relationships. I'd like to mention a few areas which are consistent with the themes, and I've already been referring to the finance and sustainability standards, pipelines, and collaboration on multilateral level. For the first time, we will be able to use financial guarantees, as I said, through the FSD Plus instruments, working with our partner banks. It should increases, maximizes our impact and collaboration through the working we will do together. Maximizing impact means mainstreaming climate and sustainability objective into the financial systems. And this is where it is important that together with India, being an important member of the International Platform for Sustainable Finance, we ensure that green taxonomies go into the play and go into the financings, because this is how we will change and direct the finance and the private market into objective or concur to the realization of our objectives in terms of green and global climate change objective. Of course, India has strongly signaled its direction of travel in its union budget, announcing that sovereign green bonds will be issued for mobilizing resources on green infrastructure for the first time. This is definitely an area where our cooperation is important, and we will definitely look very, very seriously. The other key area I would mention is the just energy transition that was discussed in Glasgow, and is going to require significant support of stakeholders in coal regions to move away from coal towards a more low carbon energy system. This is a huge challenge and certainly very important in several countries of Asia, but notably in India. And we would definitely want to support the development of electricity grid interconnections and regional power markets development in South Asia. Now, easy to say, much more complex to implement, but definitely this is something we will further discuss with our Indian partners to see how we can trace a sort of path to that objective. In terms of urbanization, finally, we will be working with AID to support the Indian smart city missions with a funding that we will provide through blending to improve governance of the urban sector, financing 15 climate responsive projects at city level, and many others. So I've already been extremely long, and I'm sorry for that, but I'd like to conclude in 2 words. And these are actions. And on policy and political level, India is leading several very important high-level fora over the next month, including the CDR annual meeting, raising the dialogue with the EU, and of course, not to speak about the G20 presidency that is coming up after Indonesia next year. So definitely we have an agenda, we have opportunities, and we look forward to work together on this. I'll stop here and like to thank you all for your attention. Over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Wheel, for very elaborate discussion in terms of how you see policy and its formulation process, but also the action. And you have given some very interesting examples. I would come back to you on specifics, particularly on ISA and CDRI, how you see specific contribution, and also on the point that you raised in terms of green bonds. We would discuss all that a little later. Let me have the pleasure of inviting very dear friend of this whole process, Ambassador Romana, the Ambassador at Large for Connectivity. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Chaturvedi. But before I start, I want to give my very warm congratulations to friends in India for this big anniversary, and very happy to be able to participate in it in some way. I see that we have around 90, between 90 and 100 participants. And I want to be short because I want also to have some time to use this as an opportunity for some brainstorming with this great group of people. There is still a lot of work to be done, and I think there is still a lot of things to be learned. So I'll try to walk through my presentation again through some key points and rather quickly. And I will focus on 3 elements. The first one, let me still dwell a little bit on the global gateway. Jean-Louis has already explained all the basics, but just for the comprehension, Global Gateway is now becoming a third flagship of this Commission, the other two being EU Green Deal and Next Generation EU. So just for you to understand how important this policy framework is for all of us that are working on it here, to understand also that it is something that has both integrated and upgraded the EU-Asia connectivity strategy. So we are definitely not starting from scratch, but have also learned along the way working on that strategy, including with our partners in India. Jean-Louis has mentioned a lot of elements there, but I would like to point out first, focus on concrete projects. We need to focus on projects that are high impact and transformative. And in this sense, I would say less is better. We need to be able to prioritize and identify what will have the most importance at this point. The second thing, the importance of engagement with private sector cannot be emphasized enough. We have been discussing a lot about how to organize and engage in the most effective way with the private sector. There is work ongoing for the EU side, and also link it with a pooling of different instruments that are at our disposal, not only grants and guarantees, but also export credits, and how to use the depth of the private capital that is available. And the third thing is partnerships. Partnerships are one of the cornerstones of the EU connectivity strategy or the Global Gateway. And in particular, the partnerships that we have already concluded with Japan and India are at its center. I think it's important that we do this well, because these are going to be the models that will also define how we do these partnerships in the future with others. What is, I think, our main objective now, from now to the summit, is really to focus on concrete projects. And Professor Chaturvedi, we already have discussed this many times, and you will always hear this from me. And I hope the EIB colleague will help us also, Maria will help us understand the big part of it that is already going on and what is in the plans. But it is essential for this exercise that we start focusing on very concrete deliverables. And in order to be able to do that, apart from the work that has been done institutionally, we have included help from the think tanks. I think this is a very important part of our work, because we need additional thinking, we need additional questioning, we need a bit of thinking out of the box as well. So there is an ongoing analytical work. We hope that mature ideas will come our way rather soon. And at the moment, we are focusing on, in terms of regional priorities, on South Asia and Southeast Asia. And in terms of sectoral priorities, on green transition, on digital, and on innovation, which is, I think, an essential part of the connectivity agenda. Again, I think it is important to, while we do all of this, still keep our eye on modeling and flagships to know how and what are the best, again, and most efficient ways of doing this together. This is an important moment of parallel transition, and we need to seize it, because it can help countries jump a generational development. Also, if we miss it, they will lose a generation of development. So in that sense, it is essential that we do this work, we do this work well. And finally, one thing which I always say and repeat, and I think we need to keep it in mind: this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. This is a very comprehensive structural work in front of us, and we need to do due diligence properly. Partnership on connectivity is of strategic nature, and it means also restructuring a bit of how we used to do things until now. We have certain hurdles to overcome. Both EU and India, of course, are massive administrations. So there are a number of procedures, different cycles, different methodologies, different institutional cultures, etc., that need to converge. But what is in front of us in terms of the strategic nature of this partnership, I would say, is extremely exciting. European Union and India have a combined market size of 1 billion people and GDP of 16.5 trillion. And the change we can bring is a lot of change in global terms. Our firm agreement on fundamental principles of rules-based, sustainable, inclusive, and comprehensive connectivity will have, by definition, positive implications far beyond our borders. And this is important for us to know, can be really of decisive importance in building green and digital transition and resilience of our value chains and vibrant democracy in societies, not only in the EU and India. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ambassador Romana. Thanks for re-emphasizing the point of vibrant democracies. And I think it's important for building rule-based order and having faith in terms of the strategic choices that you asked. I would very much like to request you to further elaborate the idea of restructuring our systemic impediments. Let me first invite Ms. Maria Shaw-Barrigan to tell us how her own organization is seeing this partnership, in what way she sees the partnership from EIB and their role in bringing in, and as we have been discussing, huge areas of convergence, connectivity are there, and I'm sure she would like to very much capture that. So, Ms. Maria, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good morning to some of you. It is really a pleasure for me to participate in this event today, and I thank you very much for thinking of having the European Investment Bank, EIB Global, participating as the financial arm of the European Union, and in particular in this case, in the reinforcing of our partnership between the European Union and India. I must say, I would much rather have been with you, wherever you are, in Delhi or, somewhere in India. I used to come to India at least twice a year for many years, and recently I have not been able to. So I'm really looking forward to the next occasion to be with you and to have this type of conversations in person, which is always much nicer. But anyway, we do with what we can today.
I would have very much preferred that in Brussels itself.
I know. We'll get there. We're on the right path. But anyway, I dear Ambassador and Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, I know I have many friends here today. On behalf of the EIB, what I want to share with you today is a few pointers of where we are and where we think we're heading towards, and how this fits very much with what Jean-Louis and what Romana have been, of course, expressing. And it is clear that the European Union, and therefore the EIB and India, we share common objectives, and this in the pursuit of sustainable development through progress that is clean and that is based on respect of human rights, on democracy, on the values that we are all sharing. The European Investment Bank has been active in India since 1993. We have a total amount of loans that are outstanding today of 3.6 billion euro, and we have supported over the years more than 10 billion euro of investments, and this around 120 projects. I know we're known for some of the very big ones, but we have also been supporting quite a number of small projects in renewable energy, for example, and this has created a very valuable portfolio for us of projects that are very much about climate action, both mitigation and adaptation to climate change, and that show how both the European Union and India have a commitment to support climate action, sustainable economic development, and improving connectivity and promoting social inclusion and achieving, and this is also very important, gender equality. And it is something that I would like to see whether we can discuss more. And thinking of gender equality through infrastructure projects, because it's not in general, it's in specifics. The EIB financing in India over the last few years has been 100% climate action operations. And this is where we feel we have a particular role where we can support the priorities of the Indian government. It is a question for us as the climate bank of the European Union, and we have very, very ambitious targets for ourselves. We're planning to mobilize 1 trillion euro of investment in climate action in this critical decade. And this we need to do together with India. It is one of the key partners in terms of climate action. The other important thing about this event today is that it is very timely with the creation of, within the EIB, we have created a branch that is dedicated to our activity outside the Union. It is called EIB Global. And you can see, already with the name, how it is very much aligned with the European Union's Global Europe approach and all of this connectivity and the global gateways that we're going to be discussing a lot about today. So EIB Global is here as the response from the European Union member states wanting to have a better instrument for this engagement beyond the borders of the European Union, so that we can globally address these global challenges. And we're talking clearly about climate, and that's why the link with the Green Deal, but also connectivity and addressing the shortcomings in terms of globalization that we have seen over the last few years, and then therefore talking about quality and sustainable infrastructure, which is all what Global Gateways is about. And let's not forget health, because what we have seen is that there can be no prosperity without health. And this then links with growth and jobs, but a common approach to these global challenges. None of us will be able to address them or solve them on our own. And it is working together that we have a much better chance. EIB Global investments in the context of connectivity in particular, which is the topic of today, will be strongly aligned to the EU-India Connectivity Partnership. And they will be covering cooperation in the digital, in the energy, transport, and people-to-people connectivity in all of these sectors. We will seek to provide sustainable financing to concrete infrastructure projects. I liked very much what Romana was saying about, let's be concrete, let's be specific. And that's what the EIB is about. We like to know what the project is, we will delineate it, we will study it, and that's what we will be financing. And this both for a digital and a green transition, and adhering and furthering the best international standards. And this with regards to social issues, labor, environmental, economic, and fiscal sustainability, and always creating a level playing field so that we are achieving the best value for money for the countries, but we are thinking in everything that we are doing of the generations of today, but also the generations of the future. In this sense, the European Investment Bank and EIB Global hold extensive experience of financing connectivity projects in the region, not only in India, but also in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and across Asia, and the Indo-Pacific region, which was, of course, the topic of discussions earlier this week. And this activity that we have been carrying in India, it's always very much about the connection within India. You're a huge, you're a continent as a country, but also with the neighboring countries, about clean energy generation, transmission of electricity, energy efficiency, and sustainable transport, including urban sustainable transport. Within this, the EIB is, of course, known for our metro investments in India. We've been supporting Pune Metro. Agra is the next city where we will be financing the metro. Bangalore, Lucknow, Bhopal, Kanpur. And I have the honor of having been to most of these cities to visit the metros. And I have seen really how they are projects that, of course, we look at them from a climate point of view, with the reduction of pollution, of emissions of gases, but how structuring they are for the cities, and what is the very strong social impact that this type of projects can have. So they are fantastic for the environment, but they are also fantastic in terms of creating opportunities for mobility, social opportunities, opportunities for women to be able to work in another part of the city, for girls to attend education in other areas. So very strong social in addition to the environmental impacts. I will also be very interested in discussing about rail projects, because again, rail is a sustainable form of transport. You will probably see the EIB less in roads and motorways, and I know it was mentioned, but that's why, you know, those are the types of investments we are starting to walk away from as we focus ourselves more in the more sustainable means of transport. There's also, and very importantly, transport of people, but also transport of energy, and therefore transmission lines for electricity are an area where you will see the EIB very active, of course, in sustainable energy generation, but also energy efficiency. This is an area that we need to discuss more about, because we cannot expect to continue based on a model where it's all about more energy generation. We also need to find ways of being more rational about the use of energy, and therefore energy efficiency is going to be key. And with regards to energy generation, of course, it's always clean energy generation, but where I think we can bring more value is probably in everything that has to do with innovation in renewable energy generation, and therefore offshore wind parks, for example, or green hydrogen, that I'm sure is going to be an area where the European Union and India will be working on together going forward. So before I finish, I want to come back to a point that Romana has been making very strongly, and it is about partnerships. Because here there is clearly a partnership between the European Union and India as a country, but we also need to bring into this partnership many other players. There is, of course, and this Jean-Louis mentioned, the European bilateral development agencies that are part of Team Europe, and we will be working together on this, but also the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, the other multilaterals, and very importantly, Indian financial institutions. We need to engage them as well for these common purposes that we have. And related to this, then using the existing structures, International Solar Alliance, we have a very good partnership with International Solar Alliance, same goals, and they really understand what are the capacities of the ones and the others and how we can deliver more together. There is the Green Hydrogen Initiative, and here the European Investment Bank, also because of our activity inside the European Union. We know all the European champions, those that have the capacity to innovate, and that technology exchange, because it's not transfer, it's exchange, it's in the learning from each other, I think can be extremely valuable. And I do want to also mention green bonds that Jean-Louis has mentioned, because the European Investment Bank was back in 2007, we were the first issuer of green bonds. For many years, we were the biggest global issuer of green bonds. Fortunately, now we're not, which means that others are issuing even more than us in terms of green bonds, and that was always the purpose. But what we can, it's great that we issue green bonds, that's very good. But where we can add now value is in helping others for them to issue quality green bonds. And I'm always talking about the proper green, not the bonds that are just painted green. And for this, we will be able to provide technical assistance and to act as an anchor investor that can provide that confidence to investors. Because with green bonds, if I may say, in the same way as for vaccines, it's all a question of confidence. And you need to be giving the investor the certainty that their funds are going to be used for properly green projects. So green bonds will be an area where we'll be very keen to contribute as well. But let me just finish by saying you can count on EIB Global. We plan to increase our lending activity and our lending capacity in India, but also in the region. You will find that we are a policy-driven bank. Our purpose is to ensure that there is impact that is being generated with our loans. Our priorities are going to be the ones that we are discussing in this session. That's why I feel so much at ease in this group. And let me just finish with a plea for urgency. We are talking about infrastructure projects. Romana was very clear, nothing happens quickly in infrastructure. But if we don't start now, we are not going to see the results within the time frame where we really need to be making a difference together. So urgency in determining what projects we're going to be supporting, providing the technical assistance, getting them in motion, because we need to start moving now so that we can have results in the foreseeable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ms. Maria Schauberger, for your remarks. And I think you have brought in several very important points on which definitely I would like to ask you. But 2 points which are very much up in my mind. One is definitely in terms of how you see the Indian financial institutions actually pitching in, what kind of role you see for them. And second is about which, of course, I'm also going to pose to Mr. Wheel, is in terms of the triangular cooperation, India, EU, in third country. You also emphasized on landing in India, but also in the region, the point that you made. So how you see that triangularity coming in. So friends, thanks a lot to this very accomplished panel. They have given us neat 40 minutes to discuss, and I think we have sufficient time in hand. To panelists, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Kindly have a look at that. And Falguni has bombarded several questions. Whatever you want to pick up, please do that. But in addition, I would begin in the same order as we had the panel. So I would first go to Mr. Wheel and would very much like to ask him 3 points which I had mentioned as he had finished. Number 1 was the specifics of engagement with ISA and CDRI. The second one was the nature of green bonds, as the finance minister in India has talked about in her budget. And the third point is about the triangular cooperation. So with these points and the ones that are in the Q&A box, I now invite Mr. Jean-Louis to share his perspectives on how we go forward vis-a-vis the points that have already been placed on the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just browsed through the box and the questions. I'm afraid I would be delighted, but I would have to stay like a day together to try to give a thorough answer. Now, I will start with let's start with the what I can do and try to do the best use of time. On your 3 points. Regarding first collaboration on CDRI and International Solar Alliance, we just our Commissioner Opulainen, just signed a letter to the Minister of Foreign Affairs a couple of days ago to announce a financial contribution to the CDRI IRIS initiative that will support the activities of CDRI. We definitely believe that CDRI is a major initiative under Indian leadership, for which, and it is relevant for the region, for notably the small island countries, the SIDS, because climate change, of course, we had a lot of talks. You've heard us about the need to transform infrastructure, but there are consequences, direct consequences of what is actually happening in terms of climate change, where countries, notably in the Pacific, but not only, are facing a sea rise level, and this is directly challenging their survival. And we all know about the Maldives, but it's also the case of Kiribati, where possibly in a few years some islands will disappear under the sea just because the water rises because of climate change. So we definitely need to equip numbers of these countries, but not only these one, but others also, to the consequences and to be resilient to the climate change, be it the sea rise level, but also the storms. We've seen various examples recently in the region, but also in Europe. The other week there was a huge storm here in Belgium, which is quite unusual, I'd say. And these are the direct consequences that you can feel, and that needs to be there. So on that one, definitely. Same goes on International Solar Alliance, where we are not there yet to perhaps financially contribute, but definitely we want to participate to the efforts to promote solar energy, which is an alternative, which is not the answer to solve everything, but certainly will contribute heavily to the change of the energy mix that are used by countries, and to come out, if possible, as much as possible, out of coal. And we know it's a complex issue. I just mentioned it in the Just Energy Transition package, but this is where, again, India has shown the way, has taken leadership, and we definitely want to support India because we see commonalities of objectives on these issues. On your second question regarding triangular cooperation, yes, of course, this is not new. India has been a promoter of triangular cooperation since its years, and I think here again, something we will have to look into, especially if we look into Africa. We speak here a lot about Asia. We are in Asia, but Africa is also one of the priority areas, I'd say, for the European Union, where the bulk of global gateway will display, but not only. And definitely India we look to India as a partner for triangular cooperation on the continent. Of course, something that will need to be established, not formally or institutionally, but I mean, this is, I'm quite pragmatic. I'm looking on a case by case, because it's not that we can decide on the top of our head, yes, let's do triangular cooperation everywhere and that's it. It doesn't work like this, because depending on what everyone or each partner can bring to the table, depending also on the receiving and the partner country, wherever what he or it looks at, then we might together have or not the competitive advantage or the solution that would be provided and needed for that country. But definitely this is something we would like to look into in partnership, because this is the way we see things. On the green bonds, that's a trick. I mean, I feel like Maria perhaps is better placed than me to answer your questions. In the tools, how we are now organizing the FSD Plus, so this guarantee scheme, there is clearly a choice that has been made to focus. We will go through a call for proposals, asking the banks to what they would like to use the guarantee for. I mean, making it very simple, and sorry for the experts if I'm savaging their complex file, but just to explain it in simple words. We'll focus on certain area, thematic areas. One is energy, etc. One is clearly green financing and green bond emission, because we believe this is a tool which will be attractive. Maria was very, very helpful in explaining how the EIB has launched this. We have developed at EU level the taxonomy that you're absolutely aware. We have this international platform, sustainable finance, which has been put in force, to which India is participating. These are the things that are framing and will slowly frame the market and gear and direct the money into that direction. So definitely we would like our partners, a financial partner, to take some risk, or to see how they can use this de-risking tool to allow and to push some private markets into green financing bonds, because this is a direct tool that will, at the end of the day, participate to the achievement of the goals. Sorry, it was long, and of course there are all the questions in the chat, but I should not monopolize, I feel, the discussion, and of course happy to be challenged. I've seen questions about BRI, how does Global Gateway compete or not, or to the BRI. In a nutshell on that one, because I think it's important. We're not here on a competition. It's not the word. I mean, Global Gateway is a different offer. I mean, we know that there are a need in the regions, that there is a Chinese offer that has been rolling out since years, which of course has some differences. There's a lot of funds around the BRI. Here we come with some funds, but we also come with sustainability, transparency, and principles that are, I think, especially sustainability in terms of finance is important. So to target and achieve certain goals. So that makes us, or our offer, different to the BRI. We're not in a mood of competing. It's not just offering something different. Well, I'll stop here and perhaps hand over to you for further questions and perhaps other answers by the other panelists.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Jean-Louis. Let me bring in Ambassador Romana. I had already suggested to you this whole idea that you mentioned about the nature of comprehensive work that we do, as we need to prepare ourselves to go forward. And you asked for restructuring in terms of the massive bureaucracy on both ends, EU, but also India. And how do we streamline? So my question to you is, these massive systems that you alluded to, what exactly is in your mind, and how you think, given the kind of challenges Mr. Jean-Louis alluded to, what kind of ideas you would think of when these choices are also very strategic? So time and timeliness, they are very important. And if we are delaying, we are delaying. And in my mind, uppermost is also the issues which are unfolding in areas which are probably the third country concerns. Mr. Jean-Louis has also explained about Africa, and we heard Maria reflecting on the idea of third countries. Arctic is definitely coming in terms of how we manage global public goods and connectivity with the norms that we need to follow. So there are some of these issues, whatever you want to pick up, and then Falguni has placed some questions, and I see the list growing every moment. So please, whatever you want to say. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Let me pick up on the word that Maria used, urgency. So we are in a bit of an interesting situation. We are before a marathon that has a sense of urgency. And we have to somehow square the circle. It's important to, I think, have clarity of action, because clarity of action will help us also, in a way, shorten the timeline and will add to our ability to deliver sooner. What is clarity of action entails? First, I really believe we need to understand this as a strategic exercise. We have to have a helicopter view. We have to understand the space, and we should at all times be. We should at all times approach it from the regional angle. You have mentioned South Asia One Grid example. I think this is the logic. This is how we should look at things, and this is how we should plan for our action. The second thing is we have to overcome granularity. This is a very complex discussion on its own, and it is important to really think in terms of pooling and converging. And here we will need to. We are doing pooling on our side in terms of the EU capabilities. I think it's important for our partners in India to do similar, so that we can move towards streamlining of this action in a way that will help us meet the timelines needed. And finally, if there is one golden bullet for the financing of the massive needs, it is real involvement of private sector. But to get private sector fully into this, we need to think about the package that would help them really come in full force. And that package consists not only of financial instruments that can support, but equally so of the standards that would be attractive to, predictable and attractive to the private sector, and the skills, the skill set that they need in order to come into a certain market. So I think we need to do a number of sort of focusing acts so that the direction of the travel is clear, and that will help us, I think, meet this challenge of something being a big restructuring in terms of a marathon, but also sense of urgency, because we have to deliver. And we have to deliver through models that will be credible and will show what is the value added of the way we do things when it comes to strategic infrastructure. I'll stop here.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Ambassador Romana. You also see this question that is there in the chat box in terms of how you see EU's strategy to attract institutional investors, and that I would also be posing to Maria. But given the global gateway strategy, how you see that to dovetail efforts at the institutional level when we talk about connectivity? You are on mute, Madam.
I see this is the last question, and indeed I will need Maria's view and help here. But I mean, at the very beginning, I started working on this file. A huge question mark I had was, how do we use the depth of capital markets? And I'm not sure I can give you an answer now, because I think this still needs both outreach and some more structural thinking. How do we do this? Because I think the key element in getting capital markets on this is trust. And there has to be credibility of action, which they will, be comfortable in supporting. I think the depth is massive. It can be of vital importance. There are in the world examples of work being done and sort of putting together big capital market providers and then the projects that are on the large scale. But this is, I think, one of the sort of due diligence parts of activity that we're still to finish. Maybe Maria can help me with this as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Ambassador Romana. Let me now turn to Maria. You already have huge list of questions. As you see in the chat box, Dr. Priyadarshi Dash is already asking you questions in terms of the finance, its importance, regulations, and the green finance, how we bring in the low and the middle income countries, the institutional issue of investors. I had already placed before you my list of questions, particularly related to the green hydrogen that you referred to and how you think financing of that is possible. And of course, your own effort in terms of landing in India, but also in the region. So those issues are very much on the table for you after your presentation, and I see more additions to this discussion. So over to you.
Thanks very much. Yes, I do have a long list. I'll try to cover as much as I can. There was the question about how to make the Indian financial institutions pitch into these efforts that we are making, and in a way this is linked to the institutional investors. It's not the same thing, financial institutions and institutional investors, but I can probably tackle both. Let me start by saying finance can be extremely powerful. And that I say this working in a bank it may sound obvious, but we know that for investments to happen they are going to need finance, be it from capital markets or financial institutions, and therefore the choices that financial institutions make can really shape the reality for the future. And here, my point would be financial institutions, both public and private financial institutions, have a duty to listen to society. And here, again, then, new generations are telling us they want to be able to have their grandchildren enjoying a world where there is some nature left and where they can breathe and where there will be a future that is not always going to be about what is the next extreme weather event and how they're going to survive. And this means that financial institutions, what they can do, and I think they have a duty to do, is look into how they can make commitments to be aligned with the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is where globally all countries, or most of the countries, came together and said, this is what we want to achieve, and these are the targets that we are giving ourselves in terms of where we don't want to go. And financial institutions should take action. In the EIB, we have a document that is called the Climate Roadmap, and it says what actions we are going to be taking by when in order to adapt our activity to Paris alignment. So that's one element that financial institutions can make. The second thing I would recommend financial institutions to do is to start analyzing climate risks. We are all very good at doing risk analysis for credit risk, and then sometimes we are even too conservative with regard to credit risk. But climate risk is here to stay. And within this, there is a very clear warning, and it is we need to stop financing assets that will become stranded assets in 10 years' time. Because particularly when you're talking about a big investment that is going to have an economic life of 15, 20 years, you need to think, will this still be useful in 15, 20 years? And here, if I may be, and I know it's going to be controversial, in particular in India, but coal-fired power plants right now are future stranded assets. So we need to stop financing coal-fired power plants. Last point on what financial institutions can do is issue green bonds. And it's not because of the fact of issuing green bonds. It's because when you issue green bonds, you are committing to use the proceeds of that bond issuance into green projects. And therefore, you are starting this transformation within your own institution. So that's about financial institutions. On institutional investors, I think, again, some of these points would apply. I'm thinking of pension funds and insurance companies, for example, that have a big balance sheet and a lot of assets they can invest into. Here, what I think we need to be providing to them is financial instruments that are scalable, that are standardized, because what they will not have is the capacity to be looking into the details of individual projects. And therefore, that somebody is issuing green bonds and institutional investors can be buying these green bonds, knowing that they're going to be of good quality, is an important way in which we can involve them. It will be necessary to take regulatory measures as well, because sometimes we are almost creating disincentives for them to invest in maybe assets of a certain rating, because then it's very capital consuming for them. So if we want to engage them, we will have to create regulatory incentives from a capital point of view. I want to come back on the question of triangular cooperation, because we do have some very good examples of triangular cooperation. We have been working with Nepal and with Bhutan on renewable energy, and this is renewable energy that they will not be using, that it is being generated in Nepal or hopefully in Bhutan soon, and that the expectation is that it will be then transferred to India and used in India, where there is a much higher demand. So these are some of these triangular projects where we as the European Investment Bank and the European Union, we can be contributing. Transport is another one, and rail transport would be relevant to this. And I want to mention two specific things we have already done between India and Africa. And one of them is with the International Solar Alliance. We had, together with ISA and the EIB, a program about home solar devices, and you have very good experience in India about these very small solar devices at home that in areas where there is no access to the grid can make a big difference when it gets dark every night. And we've been using that experience in Africa, adapting it, but studying together how we could work together to deliver more home solar devices in certain areas of sub-Saharan Africa. And we also have in the health sector, together with one of the Indian champions in vaccines, we are working on a vaccine for tuberculosis that is specifically for the variant of tuberculosis that happens in sub-Saharan Africa. And we have been financing their phase 3 trials of this vaccine. And this is particularly important because we're talking about a part of sub-Saharan Africa where there is also a lot of HIV, and therefore HIV with tuberculosis becomes particularly deadly. So it is fantastic to see Indian pharmaceutical champions that are also looking into the African market and solving African problems. So there are possibilities for triangular cooperation, and then this creates fantastic possibilities. On Global Gateway, there was a question in the chat, and Jean-Louis has partially addressed this, but I do want to say that what we're talking about is an alternative model. So it's not about competing, it's about creating a different way of doing certain types of investments. And here, very clearly, looking at questions of human rights, this is ingrained in the way Europeans work, and therefore human rights, labor rights, but also the sustainability aspects in all of the ways, fiscal sustainability. So not creating dependencies, almost like in the hope that that country later on will not be able to pay, and then I can get their port here or this, mine access to minerals there. It's looking at fiscal sustainability, at environmental sustainability, at the economics of the project. Does it make sense to do this project? Is it going to generate those externalities for society? And at social sustainability. And all of this based on respect and on no dependencies. It's really a relationship of partnership, which is very much the approach of the European Union. And there was this very specific question of what are the sectors of global gateways. Very quickly, it's transport, it's digital, it's health, it's education, and it's trade. So it's everything that creates connectivity, not only physical, but also people to people. And let me just finish with the question on green hydrogen. I think green hydrogen, clearly it's an innovative technology. It is not that there is that many projects globally, but we clearly see that it is one of the ways in which the future will be different. And what we have to work is on demonstration projects. It's pilot projects at this stage. And for this, we need to create those connections on the technologies so that we have, and here again, it's a question of a partnership of equals. You have in India fantastic technologies that we want to learn from, and we have in Europe, and we are dedicating a lot of effort to developing technologies on green hydrogen. And it is bringing this together and then using, and I'm always talking about green hydrogen, because we're talking about where does it make sense to use renewable energy for the generation of hydrogen, and then how can we make best use of this green hydrogen in the industrial sector, and sometimes maybe export it. And that's, I'm having these conversations also in Africa, for example, and I'm telling them, you can turn the Sahara Desert into your gold mine, because you have the space. In India, land use is an issue. So that is one of the things that we will have to be careful with. But you have opportunities that we don't have because of our geographical location. So it's in that working together for a technology that is clearly a technology for the future. I stop here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Maria, for very precise and comprehensive response to all the questions that have come up. They are still pouring in for you here, so I would leave you with your popularity. But I think, Ambassador Romana, let me bring you in here at this stage as Maria very rightly said, partnership of equals. And when you were mentioning partnership, you said that partnerships are crucial when it comes to EU's own action plan. And you gave example of India and Japan. And I wanted to ask you complementarities that you see between sustainable connectivity of EU and Japan's Asia connectivity strategy, how you see the complementarities between the two, and in what way you see the larger approach and the one precise to India-EU partnership. So over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. I have had the pleasure of negotiating both partnerships, and in their structure, they are basically the same in terms of the blocks that we cover. So the first one is fundamental principles. I think, understanding of what both partners stand for. Then a bit of how do we do this bilaterally, and two novelties in both partnerships. One novelty was doing it also together in other regions and other countries, and the fourth was somehow scaling up the work on attracting private investment. And in that sense, the two partnerships, I would say, follow the same logic. Of course, these are two different partners. Right? They come with two different with different elements and different approaches in certain things. But what I see also, it is complex, and there was a question in the chat whether it would be possible, for example, for US and EU to work together and invest in India. All of these are, of course, open possibilities, and I'm pretty sure that these joint investments are already happening. Also, we can think about EU, Japan, and India thinking and doing things together. But I think for that, we would still need to look for the best methodology. Whether it is through an already existing financial institution, which might be easiest given the different administrative hurdles in our respective administrations. But I think what is important in all of these is there is a true convergence of understanding the principles and what we want to do and how we want to do it. And I think in that sense, the discussions within also different multilateral groupings are very useful. And sorting out first the way we will do it. And Maria mentioned the word demonstration projects. We use the word flagship projects. I use the word model. I think we need to start from something that would very clearly explain what are all the ingredients that do provide a project that is sustainable, that is transformative, and that in the end, or to start with, is to the benefit of the community. So it's a lot of work in front of us, because there is a lot of, I would say, a lot of packages have to come together, the package of priorities, the package of instruments, to make this exercise a bit more user-friendly. But I think we are on the right path. And what is the most important thing is both of these negotiations, I have to say, were much easier than I thought before I started negotiating them. So it means that there is a top-level political will, which is essential. And this is what we now have to work to implement.
Thank you. Thanks, Ambassador Romana. As you might have seen in the chat box, there is this question by Mark, which is intending to explore if you see opportunity of EU to work with the US on funding projects in India and the region. Do you see that possibility?
I mean, this is there is a dialogue ongoing with our colleagues in the US on convergences between Global Gateway and Build Back Better World. And also, that they have a new institution or relatively new institution, the DFC, that is also providing a guarantee instruments for large-scale infrastructure investments. So indeed, I think there is a lot of scope for cooperation with the US, and it is something that we are taking on in different sectors, in different levels.
Thank you. Thanks, Ambassador Romana. Let me now turn to Mr. Wheel, and as you might have seen, the last question that is there from Patrick in terms of how you see the trilateral cooperation and yesterday's forum on Indo-Pacific. So Patrick is asking, do you see any particular connectivity projects or niche areas that the EU and India can do together in Indo-Pacific? That's the question.
Look, thank you. I didn't answer the chat. I've tried to answer a couple of them, but I didn't answer that one because I don't have any concrete example at hand now. The whole exercise and the difficulty, although we have tons of ideas, is now to go through the ideas to see how they look. Of course, I mean, I could give examples, but are just ideas, and I don't think it would mean anything just because it is mine or my vision or information that I've collected here and there on informal or totally informal basis, and that will not make it. This is something we need to sit together within India, but as I said, also not only the two of us, also the partners in Africa. Because it's not that we are going to decide what is best for others without having them in the room. So clearly there are a lot of ideas. We work as one of the way of working, which is also new to these global gateways under Team Europe approach, and that I think Maria and Romana have alluded to that, which is gathering and joining forces with our member states, because I mean the EU has consequent amounts, but not necessarily huge amounts that can make it. But if we act together, look together into priorities and flagships or pilots or whatever you want to name it, projects, we might find things where not only for the European but also for the other partners, it would make sense to work together. So definitely no answer to give specifically or do this in Tanzania or in Nigeria or in Senegal, but definitely certainly the willingness to sit together to see how we perceive it, what ideas we have, and how we can come back together. Well, sorry for this perhaps disappointing answer, but I mean I wouldn't start launching ideas that I'm not even sure they would fly after this meeting or this session. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Jean-Louis. Let me now bring in my partner think tank from the other side of the border, Stefania. I think we have covered all the questions that have come in the chat box and in Q&A box. The panel was generous enough to respond not only to specific questions I raised, but also our participants with this huge response that has come in. So I have now great pleasure in passing this floor over to Stefania for her remarks, her concluding remarks, but also how she sees the future series of seminars that we have planned together, how we take this dialogue forward. Today is a great beginning with 75 years of India's independence, and as we are going forward with the celebrations, more and more collective thinking in terms of our partnership, in terms of connectivity, not just in terms of physical connectivity, but also connecting our societies, people, and also the norms and values we stand for, the vision that we have of the global restructuring, re-engineering, and also do not bring in the idea of debasing development localization efforts, strengthening local communities, strengthening local capabilities and capacities, and not seeing them as dumping yard for centralized production systems, to see that we do not support them. as they strive to achieve sustainable development goals. So our idea of connectivity, our idea of physical infrastructure development, our idea of partnership is based on the broad principles of collective commitment for including everyone, leaving no one behind. And that's the bottom line with which we are approaching this. We are trying to see that the financial mobilization, financial sustenance in terms of environment, and also local skills and local capabilities contribute in this re-engineering and restructuring. And that's where it would be truly people-to-people cooperation. So several of these new areas we would be exploring over a series of next few seminars. I now request my colleague, Stefania, for her remarks and closing our today's session. So over to you, Stefania.
Thank you, Sachin, and thanks. Actually, would like to start indeed on a personal note with a really congratulations to all the speakers and to the moderator for really making today an event so interesting. I am a keen observer of EU-India debate for a number of years now, and especially in this context, but not only. Today's event was really one of a kind because it was combining both the political discussion about values and principles, but really with the concrete actions, how to implement it and what it means actually transforming these shared values and these shared principles into actions. So thank you really for making it happen and making it happen in these terms as today. So thanks for this. The discussion today was really, really rich. So I'm not gonna detail everything that has been said. First of all, because it would take me too long. And secondly, because I'm afraid that I would not give justice to what has been said. It started from a conceptual frame, detailing again the richness of the principles and how it fits and how the bilateral EU-India connectivity partnership fits into the global gateway. To then move on into the richness of the connectivity actions that are planned and that are ongoing. We had a hands-on discussion with lots of numbers detailing how the 300 billion euros committed until 2027, 27, yes. And the initiatives that have been presented, a number of initiatives have been presented with a lot of impact, social impact, economic impact, environmental impact. For example, there was the metro project that I have on top of my mind, but many others have been listed. And indeed, actually, I do not make justice singling out any of them. But there were 2 or 3 keywords, key concepts that actually went on throughout the whole discussion from the beginning until the end. We have repeatedly heard the importance of climate change and how connectivity initiatives are vital to address climate change and how these concrete projects and initiatives are in practical terms contributing towards this challenge. The second indeed was the importance of commonality, partnership, how to commonly, to have a common approach to confront these common challenges, something that we have heard detailed in different ways from the financial side to project implementation. And quite interestingly, we have also heard how standards of the regulation, which is terms that are usually in the vocabulary of political discussion, but today enter the discussion in different terms with a different twist. Because of course, this is a very big component of the implementation of the famous common shared values and principles, because at the end of the day, these principles then concretize in standards and regulations that are joint. So this is actually, this was a key message and a key point for me, because of course it links also to another issue that was detailed, which is the one of trust and confidence, which was detailed rather in financial terms. And that was again very interesting, because trust and confidence is certainly an issue which enters the political discussion, but on a different way. So today we elaborated on this common vocabulary, but through different angles. And that's why it was very rich and interesting, today's discussion. So I have 3 takeaways that I would like to share. My first is, I like this, marathon with a sense of urgency, which describes a little bit the challenge. We are ahead, we're facing something that is in the long term, is a structural change, but we have a sense of urgency because nothing happens quickly. And if we don't start now, we're not going to see the results in the necessary time. So that was a nice Twitter that I may be using as a quote for today. But with this, we also need the clarity of actions. I also got this sense of, taking, presenting model or flagship projects. There was different definitions of those, but anyway, projects that can explain the methodology and can therefore pave the way for other projects to roll out, and also be a source of inspiration for partners to look at and to perhaps be inspired to join the initiative. On this, I also, and allow me, of course, the difference between Global Gateway and the EU connectivity initiatives with the competition, so to say, the BRI, which of course nobody likes to say this way, but I dare to use this framing because at the end of the day, this is in certain, this is a little bit the elephant in the room, and sometimes it is phrased in this way. So today, I think we have heard away from the slogans, but really through concrete examples, what really means the difference. What is it? We're not talking about a lot of money, but we're really talking about different concept of sustainability. And what this sustainability means, we've heard the concrete example, the concrete implementation of it, and all the different sub-definition of sustainability, financial sustainability, what it means to look for the opportunity for a project which has social impact, which has make economic sense, which has an environmental positive impact. So through this kind of discussion, we really had a discussion that provided us with the tools, concrete tools that helped us visualizing what it all means. And finally, indeed, to conclude, on behalf of SEPS, we are joining together with RIS, Dr. Chaturvedi's well-known think tank. We are joining this initiative on implementing, bringing this whole discussion, today's discussion forward and understanding how to actually make it happen. What can be these famous flagship projects, which connotation they have, and what will be, why would they be chosen as the flagship, the reasoning behind compared to others. So I really look forward to working on this initiative. I actually invite our esteemed audience to please reach out to express your interest in the initiative and provide ideas and to discuss how to take it forward. So thank you again for today's discussion. And I now just leave the floor very quickly to Anil Patni, if he has any concluding remarks.
Thank you, Stefania. No, I have no further remarks to add, except to, officially express my sincere thanks to all the panelists and the speakers for today's very successful event. Also to all the members of the audience for participating and attending this event. As you have already said, this is just part of a process. The discussion continues, and audience members who are so interested are welcome to get in touch with us to contribute ideas and to take this discussion forward. Thank you very much, and namaskar. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodbye for now.
Thanks. This is only. Thank you. Bye.